well, what if your parents expect certain things of you and you don't do them? Is that a breach of relationship? Yes. Now, you don't always have to agree to the expectations of someone, but in their mind, they'll think it's a breach of relationship. Now, of course, if you have a relationship by agreement, marriage, being covenanted with the Creator, okay, these are agreements these are covenants or relationships by agreement, well, then you would also know that you breached. But if you have a relationship by default, like a parent and a child, you may not know what they expect. And your expectations for them and theirs for you may not match. Well, then maybe it's not a breach of relationship, but at least they see it that way, because in their mind, that's the relationship. What's the gift of righteousness? The gift of righteousness is he pops your bubble and teaches you the right way. The gift of righteousness is not, as Christianity might like to say, he just gives it to you, like you're now righteous. Right? Isn't that what Christianity teaches? You believe in Messiah, and now you're righteous. No. Righteous is right behavior. Okay, righteous is someone who does what's right. And so you can't have righteousness from somebody else. Okay? You have to have your own righteousness. Because you're only going to be declared righteous if you do what's right. Well, what about the imputed righteousness of Messiah? That's what's needed in order to get to where the death penalty no longer is on you. His righteousness is what earns you the ability or the potential to live forever. So that righteousness is still necessary in your life. Notice that through one man, this resulted in this condemnation or this judgment of death on men, but through another, look at the way the wording is. There resulted a righteous declaring of life. In other words, there was a declaring of what brings life. It didn't just bring life. Through one man brought death, the other man just brought life. No, it says there was a declaring. What was declared? The Torah, the covenant, the path. He says, I am the way. If you died because of sin, or you put sin to death, and how do you still walk in it? So everybody's saying that, well, the law was so hard, and so we failed at it, which is why we were sinners, and that's why we deserve death. But Messiah came so that we could be having everlasting life, but we could just continue to sin. We can still eat what we want, do what we want, keep what we want. We're going to break all these Torah commands. Oh, but you're saying, but I don't do adultery anymore, and I don't steal anymore. Good for you. That's like this much of the Torah, okay? Matter of fact, he makes a much bigger issue of idolatry and Sabbath keeping than he does of anything else in the Tanakh. You're now supposed to walk in newness of life. So if you were behaving A, and now you believe in Messiah and keep behaving A, how is that newness of life? Now, if you were behaving A, and now you're behaving B because of Messiah, now you've maybe done something different. Especially if we understand that B is covenanting. You went from being a worldly, Gentile, uncircumcised, whatever word you want to use, to someone who's just basically, in Ephesians 2, dead in your trespasses, separated from Elohim, apart from the promises, not in covenant. That's what it says in Ephesians 2, word for word, okay? He says, you were that, but then Messiah gave you that opportunity to bury that and now have life, to be able to walk in newness of life. This is critical stuff. That's where you basically kick the old man back into the grave and say, get back there. You were supposed to be dead. Except the old man's like a zombie. It's hard to kill. All right? Just keeps coming out of the grave. You got to keep kicking it back down there. All right. You know, it's funny. I just had a thought. These random thoughts come into my head. So you know in all those sort of weird zombie movies and everything else, the only way to kill these things is to cut off their head or something like that? All right? You need to cut off your head. Because that's where the problem is, in your head. The old man still rules because your head isn't right. Okay, so maybe that's not a bad metaphor that they put in these movies. This dead keeps coming back to life until you blow up its head. You either got to shoot him in the head or you got to cut it off. That's the only way to kill him. The battle is in your head. I have Messiah, so I'm alive to Elohim. No, you have to have what makes that relationship. Yeshua says, if you love me, guard the commands. Oh, you say, oh, it doesn't say, it says guard my commands. They're all his commands. All of the Torah is his commands. He's the lawgiver. So he says, you love me, guard my commands. So you can't have a relationship with him and not guard his commands. 1 John says, if you say you know him and do not guard his commands, you're lying. And the truth is not in you. That's true, because if you don't keep his commands, then obviously the truth isn't in you, because if you're keeping his commands, the commands are the truth. Because he is the truth, the Torah is truth. So obviously if the Torah is not in you, there's no truth in you. Ooh, that's really rough. Look, all you Christians watching are mad at me right now. How about instead of being mad at me, embrace this and fix it? So there's two paths in the big sense of things, right? Many, many paths lead to all kinds of sin. One path leads to righteousness. But there's two choices here. He says, do you not know, have a relationship with, understanding, fully, completely embrace that to whom you present yourself servants for obedience, you are servants to the one whom you obey. This is about obedience. It's not about, he did it all for me. This is Paul talking. He says, whether it's sin to death, that's where that leads, or obedience to righteousness. Obedience to what? Paul comes from the most orthodox of branches in that day. Student of Gamaliel. He certainly would have been talking about Torah observance. Here it says, John is saying very clearly, this is the love for Elohim, that we guard his commands, and his commands are not heavy. That's no way to be anything but Torah observance. There's no way that could be anything else. Okay? He says, they're not heavy, because everyone having been born of Elohim overcomes the world. If Elohim has brought you and rebirthed you into a different mind, a different understanding, awakened you from the dead, so to speak, he says, you overcome the world. That's your role. And how do we overcome the world? Is by belief. Okay, he says it right there, right? And this is the overcoming that has overcome the world, our belief. And our belief, as James tells us, is an action. Because I believe, I keep the Torah. So how do you overcome the world? I don't do what the world does, I do what Yahweh said. Because by the witness of 2 or 3, a thing is established. Which is stronger, 2 or 3? Okay, so there are 3 witnesses here. What are the 3 witnesses? Water. Okay, so what's water? Okay, water is life, but water is what feeds us, but water, so he's baptized. It was the immersion. Okay, that was one witness about Messiah. Remember the water that they're also talking about is when he went in the water. Hey, this is my son whom I'm well pleased. John said, this is the Messiah when he immersed him. The one who whose sandals I'm not even qualified to unlace, so to speak, right? Now, it says by water and blood. Okay, so by blood. We have the witness that he died and was resurrected. The payment by blood. And then it says, and it is the Spirit who bears witness, because the Spirit is the truth.